Welcome to Show Focus. Here we are today with Kevin Robison. He is a new member of the New Star team with our affiliate program. He is the director of that and heading up a big operation, and quite exciting stuff going on there. And Kevin is very good, number one, with business, and number two, with people. And so today I wanted to bring him in and kind of discuss more about the ways that you deal with people when you're recruiting or when you're bringing people on. So again, along the lines of recruiting, but now I want to delve a little bit more into the process of actually interviewing people and taking this a little bit more serious. So Kevin, thanks for being here, and let's get to it.
Well, great. Appreciate it, Dallin. And so when it comes to interviewing somebody, interviewing is kind of it's a unique skill, but it's something that's very acquirable. Somebody can learn how to do it, and they can become really good at it. All too often in this industry, we get wrapped up with the idea that there's so much competition for the sales reps, and there's so much going on in order of trying to attract them to you and get them to kind of go with you, that we forget that it should be more on the sales rep.
Yes.
And when I say that, I mean just in a sense that we are the ones that are going to employ them, and it's their obligation to kind of fit the bill.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to do in terms of interviewing somebody is make sure that it's not me begging them or trying to audition my business and company. It's quite the opposite. It's them trying to show me the kind of skill sets that they have.
Yes.
That they have proper requirements and abilities that they've acquired in the past, their past experience and positions that they've held a job that I feel would be a good fit for the business. Because truth be told, we have ambition. We want to grow. We want to be the best at what we do. And in order to do that, we need the best candidates, right?
Correct.
So again, all too often we're of the mindset of how can we get this guy to sign with us, where the mentality should be, how do I get this person to hire me?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Flipping it on them to
Yeah.
make it the responsibility on them, and that makes sense. So just to back it up, as far as where we are in the process then, so at this point you've already talked to the guy, you've propositioned him on the fact that you have an opportunity for him, and so when you call him in to interview, which is a different style than I think we're used to in the door-to-door industry thus far, because like you said, it's usually us propositioning them versus instead of vice versa. So what are you telling them to bring to prep them for what they need to have when they come to see you?
Yes, certainly. Well, there's tons of avenues of meeting guys, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, it depends on where we're recruiting. If we're in a local area and we're running online campaigns, then there's a process for that, right? There's a process to reach out. There's a process to kind of screen these individuals, make sure that you want to take the time to meet them in person. Out here in Utah and other areas where we're kind of recruiting all the time, I feel that it's an important part of the process for them to come prepared with a resume, for them to come prepared to talk about previous experiences with jobs. The idea is that we want to make these people not feel as if they're one of a million guys that are being recruited, because that's exactly how it is out here in Utah. Everybody's being approached by a company. There's always a fallback company.
Yes.
And we don't want to be that. We want to be the company that people definitely want to work with, because we have a different line of progression. It's not just the doors, it's not a summer gig, it's the opportunity to learn skills that are going to last a lifetime, and more so, the opportunity to kind of align yourself in a path that can take you to a different point, or to kind of like your end game, if you will. A lot of guys definitely get into this for the money, and don't get me wrong, it's great money, they should. But the idea is that something more can come out of it. The skills that you have, that you'll acquire, the leadership abilities that you'll acquire, and more so the opportunity to take those skill sets and parlay them into your next adventure, which hopefully is owning a business and entrepreneurship at its finest. So when I'm trying to, to relate to an individual, is that I want the best guy. So for me to hire you, you should have to audition. You should sing and dance a little bit for me.
Yes. Which is a very different technique than we've seen. What do you think then is the benefits of the mentality behind a person who's willing to do that song and dance? What are you seeing the fruits of this labor?
I think the outcome of their end game can is totally different with a person that's not willing to just take the freebies that companies give, right? There's no shortage of knowledge that a guy can interview with us and walk right around and interview with Vivint, and then walk out the back door and interview with Aptiv, and potentially squeeze out the better pay scale, if you will, or whatnot. But what we're trying to do is provide the better environment, the environment that's going to end better than a pay scale that's based on 4 months. So, again, when I'm interviewing a guy, I want him to tell me about his ability to deal with rejection. Mm-hmm. I want him to tell me about some skills that he's picked up in the past. I would love to know about, times where he's been a leader, been called upon to be a leader, and where he's been able to magnify that.
Yeah.
Because those are guys that I want to build with. Again, if we're looking for purely just door knockers, then we can do exactly what the other companies do and hire everybody and anybody that comes in. But I think nowadays, especially, the age that we live in, I think people want to be unique. And I think people want to be wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a major difference between a guy who will kind of fall in the ranks and just be a number to a guy that wants to be a little bit more recognized in terms of his leadership abilities. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of the military, right?
Yes.
And all positions in military are extremely important, but there's a difference between a guy who comes in as infantry and a guy who wants to be a Green Beret.
Mm-hmm. Right?
There's a different kind of set of skills that this guy will have to learn, and a different kind of road that he'll have to travel in order to obtain that. But it's a great road to travel, and it's very fulfilling. And I think those are the kind of prospects we want to go after and make sure the guys can see the big picture, not just focus on the pay scale and focus on the 4 months in front of them. We want to be able to kind of nourish guys and take them to the next level.
So for us to be able then to sift through the infantrymen to find the Green Beret potential, what are you looking for? What's start to finish? Tell me some of the techniques you use to look for the diamonds in the rough, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I want a guy to come on time, right? If I'm going to set aside my time to do an interview, I want him to be on time. I also want him to look the part. I understand that we knock doors in shorts and tennis shoes, but I would definitely expect my guys to come in a shirt and tie or something close. I certainly want him to have a resume, and I want him to understand his resume. I want him to be able to back up what's on his resume. I want him to be able to talk about his resume. I want to give him a set of questions that require educated answers, because if I can find that guy, I know that I can lead that guy.
Yeah.
If that guy is in my ranks, I know that I can give him the kind of tasks and delegate to him the proper way, and that he'll see it through. That type of a guy will crawl out of knocking doors very quickly, and he will emerge as something much better, which is a bona fide leader, a person who understands people, and somebody who's willing to kind of repeat the process to become a business owner.
Okay, so those are a few of the points we're looking for. What are some examples of some questions that you might ask that you find helpful?
Yeah, so let's assume that the guy has never knocked doors before. I would love to paint him a scenario in such that, let's assume that we're on day 3 and it's 7 o'clock at night, starting to get dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's hot, he's hungry, he's tired. I'd like to know his mentality. I'd like him to explain what he's thinking and what he's willing to do to break down the barrier. I love to place guys in a game time situation, a game time scenario, and kind of put them on the spot and see how they will respond. Some answers I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm looking to reach out to the people around me. I'm going to make some phone calls. I want to buckle down on my manual and study. But more than anything, he's going to go home, detox, come back the next day and push and try to figure this out.
Yeah.
There's always a way, and we know that. But for a first-time guy, I want to make sure that he doesn't have that quit in him. I think all too often, when we're interviewing guys, we're telling them, "You can do this, man, and this is a gig that you can do, and you look the part, and we're kind of painting a picture where it's a can't miss." Truth be told, this is definitely a can miss situation, right?
Yes.
If we fill a guy with the wrong information and paint the wrong picture, we can certainly give a guy a platform to fail, and we don't want to do that.
Yes.
So I like to check a lot of those things at the door and let guys understand that, look, you will go through a process where you're going to be learning a lot. As you're learning certain things, you need to put them in order. You need to figure out the process so that you can come out on the other side and be a skilled, competent sales professional, essentially, like I said, ascend to leadership.
So with that question, then, you're trying to set real expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I do feel that is a big negative in the industry. So you're setting a guy up saying it's going to be a party the whole summer. It is this, it is that. But when you're able to paint him a picture in that question of, hey, 8 o'clock, super hard, you're hot, you're tired, whatever, you haven't had much success, what do you do?
Right.
I think it's easier for that guy to prepare for that moment when it actually happens on the doors. So I think it's brilliant. You'll have a higher success rate as well as retention rate because they're not expecting anything but reality.
Right. Well, Dallin, you've seen time and time again in your experience in the industry, you've got a ton as well, that we almost kind of live by this standard that every 10 guys we recruit, 4, 5, maybe 6 of them will fall out.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's not based on our preparation and the way that we prepare guys for the industry.
Yeah.
Again, we have a mentality of where we want to just convince guys to do the job. All too often, I think they're convinced that they're going to do the job before the interview. I think it's our responsibility to paint a picture that's proper for them. I know that a lot of people, and especially the way that the world is painted nowadays, everybody's looking for the faster option and the quickest option and the easiest option. But the truth be told, that's very hard to obtain in door-to-door sales.
Mm-hmm.
There is a process. There is a formula. And if a guy can buy in mentally and see that process through, you can achieve great things. Tons and tons and tons of majorly successful people have emerged from door-to-door sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that they're still in the door-to-door sales industry. That's to say that they've acquired a lot of skills, leadership skills, person-to-person communication skills, and they've parlayed those skills into something much bigger and greater. And I think that's a real opportunity for anybody that walks through New Star's doors.
And so that is why we're trying to be more regulated in how we're recruiting people.
No question.
We're not trying to tap dance for others. We're trying to get them to do that for us. So again, with those questions, so you've got one that kind of, one question in particular that spells out what they're going to be seeing. You're trying to see what their resilience is and their methods for dealing with basically a hard situation. Are there any other key questions that you go into?
Yeah, sure. Another scenario I like to paint is I would ask a candidate about a hobby, something that they enjoy doing. All too often when I ask somebody about that, what they like is not necessarily what I like. I personally like to do, I like to play basketball and I like to watch football, and there's some things that I like to do, but that might not necessarily be in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
My point is when I ask somebody, hey, give me a specific hobby, give me an idea of something you like to do in your downtime. When they present that, that hobby, I will then ask them to convince me to be a participant.
Yeah.
Try to sell me on the concept of, do you like ballet, Dallin? Maybe you like, opera. Maybe you like this, or maybe it's something that I just necessarily wouldn't be a part of, but you like it. You're passionate about it. I like to try to get a person to sell me on that concept, and if they can get me even flirting with it, I know that this may be my guy. Essentially, when we go out door to door, we are selling people on a concept that we see and that we feel very comfortable with. All too often, they don't yet see it. It's almost the example. If I'm up on the top of the roof at New Star and I'm looking at the sunset and I'm trying to describe to you how gorgeous it is, but you're standing in the parking lot, you don't have the same view as I do.
Yeah.
So it takes there's a lot of groundwork to make sure that you can end up seeing it my way.
Yeah.
And that's a skill, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very teachable skill that we have become professionals at showing sales reps how to get somebody here and take them there under their own free will.
So asking useful questions as far as ones that you're actually going to get information out of versus these cookie cutter like, what would you like to do in life?
Right.
What are your favorite superpowers
Right.
and stuff like that? Those aren't maybe as useful in this situation than the ones that you're proposing.
I want to hear real-time situation type of talk. I want to make sure that the guy across from me can handle himself in direct communication, right? I want to ask him something that's going to make him step outside of his box a little bit, because that essentially is what we're doing every day, all day, is stepping way outside the box, going to somebody's house and trying to convince them to do something you want them to do. I think it's essential for the person interviewing to nail that part of the interview. And again, there's a couple different ways to go about it, but again, I definitely like to talk about something that they're interested in and have them try to make me interested in it as well. So that's a strong move in an interview.
I love that. So a lot of the times we are dealing with guys that are coming in trying to get a better pay scale than the next guy or than the next company. They're using us as leverage potentially. What are some red flags that you see throughout an interview that just let you know that this guy's not in it for the right reasons potentially?
Well, And that's a great question. I certainly don't want to put a negative on somebody wanting to know what they're getting paid. I think everybody should know what they're getting paid. But I think an immediate desire to negotiate pay, maybe in the first conversation, is something that I would steer away from. Understand that, we want to do things differently, and we are doing things differently. So, past laurels don't necessarily make for huge qualifications here. Don't get me wrong. We want everybody to have certain skill sets and experiences that they've learned in the past so that we can take them and harness them. But for me, I want to make sure that a guy understands that what he'll learn here is unique to what he'll learn somewhere else, just purely pushing numbers and pay scale. Everybody knows who Zig Ziglar is. One of my favorite quotes from him is that culture and environment outweigh pay scale every single time.
Yeah.
That is a non-negotiable fact. If somebody is purely focused on a four month stint with us, we are very confident that if he's getting paid more with another company, that he'll make more here because we'll provide the right environment.
Yeah.
If I'm getting a max pay scale in another office, but it's a toxic environment, and my management, my leadership isn't exactly what it should be, and the people around me aren't working the way that they should work, then my pay scale really will count for nothing. However, if I have a bottom of the barrel pay scale, but everybody around me is rocking and rolling and having success, and I feel that desire to even keep pace, my pay scale will become irrelevant at that point. Environment and culture is the best pay scale that you can possibly have.
So the biggest red flag for you then is some guy that's just overeager about what he's going to get paid or whatever. It's not a bad angle to know what you're getting paid, like you said.
Sure.
But for him to come hot out of the gates, so that's the only thing that he's focusing on, you think that's a bad thing?
Everybody, we've all seen the guy. What do you give me? What do you give me? What's free? What do you give me? What do you give me? Can I get this? Can I get more? Can I? And it's constant about that. Don't get me wrong. I am totally into the concept of guys using this as a pivot point, as a 4-month process to make the money, and I get that, and we need those guys as well.
Yeah.
I would take the opportunity to tell a guy, hey, listen, we're going to pay you right, but the reason you're going to make money is not what it doesn't reflect in your pay scale. It reflects in the culture that we bring.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that I would throw a guy out the door that way, but I would say that I would take the opportunity to tell him, listen, you're going to make money, but it's not going to be based on the number that's on your contract. It's going to be based on the environment that you're placed in and how you maximize that environment. So again, that would definitely be a red flag. We've all seen those guys. I don't think that those guys need to just be thrown away or thrown out the door. I think that there's a way to kind of hem that down and say, hey, listen, man, I get where you're at, but let's talk about let's really focus on the
other value we have to provide. Basically.
That's right. Which again, and not to be a dead drum and not to be a broken record, but environment is everything.
Yeah.
Culture is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with us wanting to represent ourselves in a certain culture, in a certain light, what are some of the tactics as an interviewer, or maybe right off the bat, what are some of the biggest faux pas you see or have seen even in News Star or elsewhere of an interviewer makes? So what are some mistakes they're making, and then what are some corrections, or what are some proper techniques from body language all the way to closing the deal or whatever it may be, your message in the end.
Yeah, and again, and I don't want to belabor it, I think we are very much focused about the account acquisition process of our business, as we should be. It is the major part of the straw that stirs the drink, if you will. But that said, we don't need to beg a guy for his services. Quite the opposite. That guy should focus on why we should hire him. Mm-hmm. Again, and there are stats across the board that prove this to be a fact. A person who's going to work in a good environment with a good conscience, with a good mentality based on the culture, will absolutely out-earn a pay scale in a toxic environment. So I want guys to really audition to be able to be a part. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's any hiding the fact that if a guy comes and interviews with us and he doesn't look the part, and there are red flags, that we will turn him away.
So what's your posture to let him know that right off the bat without you saying things?
I think for me, you mean in terms of the way that I'm actually,
Yeah, I mean, because the physical presence is giving the message before anything's even said in the interview, right?
Absolutely.
If we're up like this and we're eager to talk to that guy, or we're being overly ambitious towards gaining him on board, we're telling it through our body language, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Yeah, no, I do. In fact, there's tons of studies on body language and power poses and all those types of things. For example, if a guy is in a room and he kind of puts his hands on the back of his head, this is an uncomfortable pose.
Yeah.
But a guy who can hold this pose in a situation for a long period of time shows that he's confident, dominant, those types of things. And I don't suggest that you're lackadaisical while you're giving an interview, but to your point, body language is crucial. I certainly don't want to be overly fidgety. I certainly don't want to be on my phone or on my laptop or making much movements. For the most part, I want to be confident in my position. I may have my leg like this, I may have my hands like this the entire time, but for the most part, I want to be relatively unmovable.
Mm-hmm.
Now for him, I'm the kind of posture that I'm looking for a guy who is almost mirroring my posture as well. I'm looking for a guy to kind of take the tone that's set in the room and follow it. It's almost similar to to if you're on the doors and you're mirroring. If you have a little old lady that opens the door, you certainly don't want to talk to her like she's an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
You certainly would address an ex-military man differently than you would address a woman coming to the door with a baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that if you're in a situation where you're the guy who's giving the interview, that you can definitely set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a good tactic to kind of look at your interviewee and see, is he responding to the atmosphere? Is he responsive to the tone that's being set? So I wouldn't have necessarily thought about it like that, but that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any then, right there at the end of the meeting, do you feel when's the appropriate time to, because we talked about recruiting before about the close, and some say it's an assumptive close, some say otherwise. Are you proposing a deal by the end of the first interview?
Yeah, so I think that there are situations where you do, and I think there are situations where you don't. Truth be told, anywhere outside of the summer sales industry, the interview process is a little bit longer, actually quite a bit longer than a one-time, hey, let's kind of meet you and then present a contract.
Yeah.
I happen to feel that there are times that we can do that, especially recruiting out here, but I think that a different approach, if one were to try it, would be to make that person understand that this is not lip service. When I tell you that this is a coveted position, a position that we are very much determining the proper candidate to fill,
Mm-hmm.
For me to jump at you after a 20-minute interview, for me would be a bit short-sighted, simply based on the fact that if I'm looking for the right candidate, I certainly have been looking elsewhere than the person in front of me. So I think they need to feel that heat a little bit and realize that, hey, you knocked it out of the park, but the job's not that easy to obtain.
Yeah.
So I personally like to wait about 24 hours and then have them come in for a second interview. When they come in on that second interview, that's when I'll present paperwork and let them know that I've decided to go along with that. That is a strong tactic when you're recruiting locally, somewhere that's not in Utah. I understand that the competition here is extremely fierce. So that maybe even hesitating or waiting that day might make a guy go across town and search for a better pay scale. That said, I would certainly just give a little bit of caution to jumping at a guy very, very quickly, because if he is looking for pay scale, whether he signs with you today and searches out another company in a day or two, if his end all is pay scale, he'll make that decision whether you sign him on the spot or not.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I think that me personally, especially when we're looking about churn and attrition of sales reps, how we hire 10 and lose 6 of them. I think if we make them feel that this opportunity is unique in terms of it's not just a 4-month gig, it's an opportunity to really educate yourself in business, in entrepreneurship, and essentially travel the road again that will allow you to be a business owner.
Yeah.
Which is what I think most guys who knock doors should definitely have it in their head, that if they can master the doors, they can run business. Certainly they need to learn and they need to be educated in doing such things, but they can do that here, they can learn it here.
I love that. Is there anything else you feel that you've learned in the interview process, or any other techniques that we haven't covered that you feel are important for our guys to remember?
I guess just to recap, I would just say that to remember that the person who's giving the interview, you as the interviewer, as the person who is going to give employment, to be that part.
Yeah.
Right? To look that part, to talk that part. To make these guys feel and understand that this is a real business opportunity. This isn't a come in and we hire everybody that walks through the door. That won't make a prospect feel unique. That won't make a prospect understand that there is a line of progression. So I think it's important for the person that's giving the interview to make sure that they paint the proper picture, and that picture is the future.
That makes sense. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for being here. I love that. Some great information about the interviewing process for when you're out there recruiting guys and bringing them in, and just a way to make it a little bit more serious and give them a longer term mindset as far as, like you said, the line of progression and where they can go, not only in sales but out of sales through this route as well. So look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks for watching.